everybody. It's been a crazy start this year, and man, it really does feel like it's only the beginning. I know many of you are worried, but we gotta stay positive. The only way to fight darkness is with light. What we are witnessing has already played out. We are experiencing the fall of a system. Corruption is being unveiled. This has happened in the past. Ancient philosophers have long discussed the downfall of all political regimes. Nothing is new under the sun. Even though America was founded on these ancient ideals of a just republic, over time it has become entirely corrupted. There are no legal avenues for true justice when it is in contrast to the contrived narrative that has become mainstream. We witness this firsthand. There is no other way we continue in this system, as many of our so-called elected officials have succumbed to their lower natures in their soul. In Plato's Republic, he discusses 5 main political regimes. I think it's important to note that Plato may very well be a figure created by the church in order to compound the knowledge of the ancients into one person, or even a certain group of peoples. Plato could be of a much more recent time, or the civilizations of people that is represented by Plato is of a much more recent time than we are led to believe. And in Timaeus, as we know from Tartaria Explained Part 1, connects with the great civilization that came before the Phoenicians, or what we call Tartaria, or the Celts, or Atlantis. That video goes over more in detail how the priest in Timaeus tells Solon of ages past that he was not aware of. This is one of the first mentions of Atlantis and Tartaria. In the last video, I talked about the Constitution and how it very well may be a document from a past age. Whether it was the founding fathers or some other civilization that created this document, they knew that tyranny would come unless you protected fundamental rights and gave the people the power. Plato has an interesting perspective as he advocated for an aristocracy. An aristocracy is ruled by a philosopher king. In contrast to a monarchy, the philosopher king is selected by a few elite individuals. Many say screw the government, let the people rule. This is simply anarchy, and the ancients were well aware of it. Now when we talk about advanced civilizations, and especially successful civilizations that produce the most good instead of the shadows of good, the ancients decided that the best form of government is a state ruled by an occult or metaphysical philosopher. Now by occult, this simply means that which is hidden, one who is selfless and whose soul has been made calm and aware of the absolute good by learning the truth based on Platonic ideas, otherwise known as ancient metaphysical knowledge, a wise man. We have not experienced this form of government since corruption has deeply infested this realm. This began after the Phoenicians, but in the past, such as with Atlantis and the Golden Age, it was always an aristocracy. A wise philosopher king ruled a state with true justice. The ancient Ari or Aryans, or noble ones, had an aristocracy. Plato was not a fan of democracy. In fact, he lists 5 regimes, aristocracy being the first and the recommended. And as you go down, democracy is the last regime before tyranny. Plato bases this on that not all people are wise philosophers. Not everyone can be an occultist, or a wise man. This is something that must be trained for, meaning Plato believes that giving the average man the freedom to vote would inevitably lead to corruption, as they could be persuaded by propaganda. There needed to be an elite few that were chosen by being best fit for the job. And the same thing applies, they needed to be philosophers who ruled based on metaphysical truths and justice. This is from a past time when metaphysics was an actual part of a ruling state. We don't have that anymore. We lost the concept of a soul, and that's the main thing to take from Plato's argument for an aristocracy. These people would be golden souls, as Plato puts it. The leaders we have today have succumbed to their lower nature, and their main motive is money. In Plato's aristocracy, the rulers can't own property. The philosopher who is exposed to metaphysical contemplation is not tempted to abuse his power in his pursuit of material goods, and his state policies are therefore dedicated to establishing only the good in the state, not his personal interest. You can see how this would be a huge contrast to what we have today, obviously. Plato insists that after an aristocracy, the government starts to degenerate into 4 regimes. The next regime is a timocracy, which Plato basically puts it as a timocracy, in choosing its leaders, is inclining rather to more high-spirited and simple-minded type who are better suited for war. The governors of a timocracy value power, which they seek to attain primarily by means of military conquest and the acquisition of honors rather than intellectual means. Next, in an oligarchy, money is prized over virtue. The leaders of the state seek to alter the law to give way and accommodate to the materialistic lust of its citizens. As a result of this newfound appreciation for money, the governors reworked the constitution yet again to restrict political power to the rich only. That is how a democracy becomes an oligarchy. Then you have a democracy, which Plato compares to anarchy. Quote, through the narration of Socrates, foolish leaders of democracy, which is a charming form of government, full of variety and disorder, and dispensing a sort of equality to equals and unequaled alike. Plato believed that democracies were societies without internal unity. They followed citizens' impulse rather than pursuing the common good. That democracies are unable to allow a sufficient number of their citizens to have their voices heard, and that such democracies were typically run by fools. Plato attacked Athenian democracies for mistaking anarchy for freedom. It's not just Plato who had a problem with democracy. US President James Madison in Federalist No. 10 states, quote, democracies have ever been spectacles of turbulence and contention, have ever been found incompatible with personal security or the rights of property, and have in general been as short in their lives as they have been violent in their deaths. So James Madison is the guy who supposedly proposed the Bill of Rights. He knew that democracy would lead into tyranny. The Bill of Rights was based on the Magna Carta, leading me to believe that the Celts or the Tartarians were in America and they established a republic. Then we're fed this mainstream history in school about the founding fathers when really, this was the civilization that was in America before the reset of 1812. The Constitution was ratified to become a democratic republic, but I think there's two forces at play. When America was taken over by the Phoenicians, or the new rulers, the goal was to turn America into a socialist democracy, to give the illusion of choice. But there must have been a force in America that was fighting the cabal that implemented a republic within the Constitution for a purpose in order to fight the global elite in the future. Maybe that's what 1776 was all about. Something happened where Tartaria fought back, or whatever civilization was in America, fought off the elite to some extent that they were able to halt their plans completely. It doesn't make sense why there would be a constitution. This kind of halts the cabal's plans. Socialism and communism is being fed as democracy in our modern day. In the past, it would be seen as tyranny. But you see it all the time nowadays where politicians are saying that this is an assault on our democracy. They keep insisting that America is a democracy for some reason. And it's on purpose. You don't see politicians and news anchors refer to America as a republic, and there is a reason for that. They want to give you the illusion that you're in control. That's what democracy brings. Well, it seems that we're seeing much being unveiled. A lot happened this year. I mean, we got front row seats to see the corruption in the failing media and big tech censorship right before our eyes. It can't sustain itself. We don't live in the same time as Plato, obviously. Our leaders don't practice metaphysics, and we have to adapt these ideas to work for our time. Maybe that was the original idea of the Constitution, to allow the people to take part in the process of electing rulers, but as ancient philosophers prophesize, ultimately this leads to corruption. The ancients such as Atlantis had a system in place in order to keep the soul in check. Our modern governments are filled with this corruption, where liberty and righteousness are not praised. We are seeing free speech at war, in pursuit of keeping the established mainstream narrative. Does this happen before? And it always ends the same. 1776 could have been some type of Tartarian revolution that led to the Republic passing through the reset. It doesn't really make sense why the cabal has still not succeeded with their plans. Maybe we're seeing a similar cycle today. There's a psychological revolution happening, and truth will always prevail. All we can hope is that our minds may be unveiled.
Let go of everything you think to be true. Relax the mind and ask the question, do I truly understand what this reality is?